just explain a little bit further on other slides. So first slide, Scott.
Right.
And actually, just so y'all know what you have, I know that Tiffany had brought you packets with some information, with updated information. So you all do have a packet in front of you. You have a copy of the PowerPoint. You also have for the general fund revenue and expenses summary. You should have that in your packet. For the general fund revenue details by line item, you would have on the general fund summary expenses by function by department. So that's all the departments in different classifications, like general government, public safety. You have information on the general fund expenses by department detail. So you could see every line item for each of the departments. You have revenue and expenses detail this is for curbside, unincorporated, 911, solid waste, and Two Rivers gun range. You also have the new position summary, the request for new positions, and also an updated capital expenditure sheet with recommendations for capital expenditures. So, Scott, do you want to hit the first slide? Go on to the next one. Scott. I can't hear anything.
It says slide number 3.
No, it says, oh, all right. Okay, so actually put it on slide number 2. Sorry about that.
All right.
That was my bad. So this is just regarding balanced budgets. It's according to state law that we have to have our revenues equal our expenses to balance the budget. And the revenues could include use of fund balance. So that's the goal, is to get the revenues to equal the expenses. And this is where we started with the original requests of over $50 million for the general fund and projected revenues of $46 million. So we originally started with a shortfall of $4.2 million. Since our last work session, we have made some reductions to the budget or to the expenses. So we're at $48,097,750, which is 1.15% increase over the current fiscal year budget. And projected revenues, I was able to increase. I received a revised property digest from the tax assessor's office, which did include an increase. I was able to increase revenues by almost 900,000. So that helped us significantly in balancing the budget.
You'll get her to
and that leaves us with a shortfall of $1,009,011 that we need to balance. And again, you could see here from the last meeting, that first line, current year ad valorem tax, we are increasing it by about 9% over the current year's budget. And on the far right, you could see that our current year ad valorem tax
Hold on
makes
just
up.
a second, Nancy.
Yeah.
We need to, okay, now go ahead. We had to
Okay,
get on the
we're
right slide.
5. We're on slide 5. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So on this, the current year ad valorem tax increased by over 9%. And that includes not only the property tax digest, but some estimates on what the timber tax, mobile home tax, and motor vehicle tax will be. And all of that is over 60%, makes up all the revenues for the general fund. Next slide.
Nancy, I got you on the slide, so you don't have to.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, so this is a chart of the general fund balances. And for fiscal year 25, we do have over 2 million budgeted for fund balance use. We don't know if we're going to use it all. There's really a lot of variables still out there on whether or not we're going to receive the revenue in time to be able to accrue it to the current fiscal year. And most of that is related to grant funding. So for budgeting purposes, I have that our fund balance will drop to 15.4 million, which is about 32% of our general fund budget. And this is the net digest. And again, I did receive a revised digest from the tax assessor's office. And my number, the estimate for 2025, does include, again, that timber tax and motor vehicle and mobile home tax. And you could see that we've had 100% growth over 10 years and just almost 10% growth from last year. So general fund expenditures by type. This was a slide that we had the last time, but we had a lot of generalizations, especially to do with salaries and moving the pay scale. So what Janice Beckham, our finance director, and I did is really drill down on the impact of moving the pay scale and also the performance awards. So we moved that kind of placeholder out of special appropriations and went back to every department and applied it to the department. So this is a little change from the last meeting, but the increase overall for constitutional offices is 1.58%. For county departments, we have a decrease of over 3%. The JDA increases by 33%. State offices, 2.84%. And employee health insurance and workers' comp, the reason we separated that out is especially employee health and the insurances, they really affect all the departments. So we do have an increase there of 12.37%. But again, overall, from the current budget to this year budget, it's a 1.15% increase. And this is a summary of the major changes. Again, it's almost $550,000 increase above 2025 levels. That's a 1.15% increase. And that includes mostly your payroll, Social Security, and retirement contributions. That's probably one of the largest increases. For the general fund, $587,911, a decrease of $13,600. Unincorporated increase of almost $447,000. Solid waste, an increase of 40,000, and Two Rivers, an increase of 69,000. And all of those increases are because of moving that pay scale one step on July 1st, which is an increase of 2.5% for all employees. And then another 2.5%, up to 2.5% on an employee's anniversary. So that's where we actually went back and prorated those increases based on anniversary date. The reallocating EMS and fire, currently the split is 90% for the general fund, 10% for the unincorporated fund. Each year we assess that and we're moving it based on fire calls to 88% for the general fund and 12% for unincorporated. And also we moved 3 employees that are really strictly 100% devoted to the fire department, fire training assistant, over to the unincorporated. That's one of the reasons you see that big increase. And also the new positions that were requested, 1 part-time and 4 full-time positions. Next slide. Additional ones are employee health. We're increasing that 476,000 to reflect the current claim and higher stop loss fees. Workers' comp increase of almost 42,000 for claims and stop loss coverage. And property, equipment, auto, and liability insurance, an increase of almost 300,000, but that's based on a 20% estimate of premium increases. We're still waiting on the final quotes. It's very common that we get them either late May or sometime early in June. So hopefully we'll have tighter numbers on that. And this is a conservative number, so we're really hoping that the actual numbers come in a little bit lower. But to keep in mind always is our deductibles remain very high, 350,000 for vehicle claims and 250,000 for liability claims. So what that really means for the most part is any claim is being funded directly from the general fund. It's not being covered by any insurance, and that's going to be an impact on our fund balance. This is just a slide that we showed the last time. The increase of almost 200% over the past 10 years in our auto liability and property insurance. And most of that is liability. This is additional summary of major changes. The public defender had increased or requested an increase for salary and benefit increases of 58,000. The DA had requested an increase in funding from 773,000 to almost 1.9 million. And the budget as presented reflects no increase, that we kept it at the 773,000. The JDA requested a $1.47 million increase, and as presented today in this draft, it includes a $250,000 increase. This is something new from the last budget. I had not included the Kingsland TAD, so I did increase the expenses, but there's also that offset of I increased the revenues for the TAD as well. So that was just a change, but we have to include that in the budget. And then, of course, transfers out of special appropriations to fund capital improvements of almost $618,000, and the supplemental funding to 911 of $596,447. Additional changes are, as I said before, the EMS split from 90-10% to 88-12%. Fleet services, the increase is mostly due to additional staffing of one part-time and one full-time position. And countywide library, increases in salary and retirement at the Kingsland Library, and an additional funding request from the Woodbine Library. They're currently funded at $30,000, and they're requesting a $10,000 increase in that. This is a summary of the positions that are included in the draft budget and the ones that are excluded. There's been no change since the last meeting. So again, it's 4 full-time positions and 1 part-time position. And this is a summary of each of the within the general fund. So this is general government. So general government overall, it decreased by 1.07%. Next slide is the courts, the judicial, and that increased by 1.08%. The next slide is public safety, and that increased by 1.37%. Next slide is public works, an increase of 0.64%, and health and welfare, that increased by 3.84%. Next slide was culture and recreation, which is really just the libraries. And overall, that was an increase of 9.09%. Planning and development, an increase of 17.16%, mostly due to the JDA request. And so the bottom line for the general fund, again, that increase of 1.15% or $547,000. The next slide is the capital expenditures. There was a slight change from the last meeting. The sheriff had asked me to add a couple items to the shared assets. Those are the forfeiture accounts that only get expended for the sheriff's office. So that changed. So that brought the total requested to 7.8 million, and what we would be funding is 4.7 million in capital requests. And the next slide just has to do with what I was talking about before, that there's still a lot of grants that are outstanding, and some of them were reimbursable expenses. Really the two biggest here where we haven't expended the Swift Current Elevation project yet, although we're awaiting a decision regarding the award. But the next 4 items, I believe all of that has been expended, maybe not the stormwater. Sean, could you correct me on that? Is the stormwater?
Yeah, no, we've received a invoice, I believe, for just over 20,000 for the stormwater, but we've put the contractor on notice to kind of halt some of the work that they're doing until we receive final input from the feds.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of work that they're going to have to do just because of some things that they've already expended funds for, but for the most part, they're halting all the project.
Right. So it's really in this area, the hurricanes Helene and Debbie. I think we're really close to getting that reimbursement. You know that I've been in contact with FEMA on a pretty regular basis and signing off on different cost reports and releases. So I do expect that to be coming soon, but really don't have it until you have it. I could accrue that back to fiscal year 25 as long as I receive it by August 31st, because all the expenses were incurred in fiscal year 25, but from an accounting standpoint, I could only accrue that back if we receive it within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year. The next one, that I believe most of that has been expended at this point, and we're still waiting for the completion of that. So that may impact our fund balance this year. And then the next two have not been expended. They were budgeted. The raise grant was budgeted, but it's on hold and it's not being expended at this point, as well as the 5-stand shotgun range. So the next slide is just a summary of curbside collections, which overall had an increase of 6.3% for revenues and expenses. The next slide is 911, which had an increase of 0.01%. And what you want to notice there is that other financing sources. So in fiscal year 25, part of that was fund balance and part of that was a transfer in from the general fund to supplement 911. And in fiscal year 26, it's 100% transfer in from the general fund to supplement it. And as you can see on the next slide, this is the revenues, expenses, transfers in, and fund balance use on 911. You could see that the revenues, which is the green, is remaining pretty consistent over the past 5 or 6 years. But the expenses, of course, have gone up. And most of that was when we did the reassessment of the public safety salaries and overall salaries for the county. And the orange is the transfer in from the general fund, which for the past several years has been supplemented by fund balance use, but we're using all the fund balance in fiscal year 25, or we should be using all the fund balance in 25. So it'll be funded 100% from a general fund transfer in. The next slide is the unincorporated service district, and that includes revenue from taxes and also the insurance premium tax. And what that funds is a portion of EMS fire. It also funds right-of-way mowing, and it funds the disbursement to the PSA, as well as we're budgeting a little bit in capital outlay for some park improvements. And that has increased by 8.06% for revenues and expenses. The next slide is Solid Waste Authority. And really, when you compare these 2 years, in the fiscal year 25, we had $3 million budgeted from state and federal. What that really was proceeds from a loan for expansion of MSW. It was a GFA loan. So if you just look at the commission and fee line, really that is what we're charging for services. And we are expecting a decrease of about 13% for fiscal year 26. And this slide is Two Rivers Gun Range, and the increase, or actually it's a decrease of 22%. And most of that decrease is coming from, we did in fiscal year 25 have 120,000 being transferred in from the general fund for capital outlay. And this year we would not have that. So overall, it's showing a decrease. And then next steps, what is highlighted is tonight's work session on May 20th. We could determine after this meeting whether or not we need additional work sessions or if we just moved into presenting a proposed budget on June 3rd. But we are in a timeline. We have to advertise in the Tribune-Georgian. We have to advertise our public hearings and give notice. So we have to keep that in mind as well. And that's all I have, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody got any questions for Nancy? Anybody got anywhere they want to cut? We still got some time to think over any more cuts we want to do, and we can get it worked into the budget. Nobody's got anything for Nancy? We'll close this meeting. All right, hearing none, we're closed. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.